Meghan Markle made her first husband agree to a pregnancy contract to make sure that she was afforded every possible luxury if she gave birth to their child.
The British monarchy has weathered centuries of scandal, abdications, and constitutional crises. It survived the Wars of the Roses, the execution of a king, and the abdication of Edward VIII for love. But what is unfolding right now, quietly, persistently, and with increasing legal weight, may be something the palace is uniquely unprepared for. A name has resurfaced from Meghan Markle's past. Not from a tabloid gossip column. Not from an anonymous tip. But from the intersection of royal succession law, public record, and a sustained campaign of scrutiny that is forcing even serious constitutional commentators to pay attention. That name is Trevor Engelson. And the questions being raised in connection with his history with Meghan are no longer confined to fringe forums. They are appearing in royal biographies, legal commentaries, and mainstream media discussions, and they carry implications for Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet that go far beyond anything their parents could have anticipated when they stepped back from royal duties in January 2020. Today, we are going to examine this story carefully, honestly, and with the nuance it deserves. We are going to separate verified fact from speculation, explain the actual legal framework governing royal succession, and tell you precisely why, regardless of what you believe about the medical claims circulating online, Archie and Lilibet's position in the line of succession is genuinely, structurally, and increasingly fragile. Stay with us, because this story is far more complex than the headlines suggest. To understand why Trevor Engelson's name carries such weight in this conversation, we need to go back to before Meghan Markle was a duchess, a Netflix documentary subject, or a household name across 4 continents. Before the tiara, before the global wedding broadcast watched by an estimated 1.9 billion people, before the Oprah interview that sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace, there was a quieter, more private chapter of Meghan's life. And at the center of it was a man named Trevor Engelson. Meghan and Trevor met in Los Angeles in the early 2000s. He was a film producer and literary manager, already building a respectable career in Hollywood. She was an actress working her way up through minor television roles and auditions. They dated for roughly 6 years, a relationship that, by most accounts, was serious, committed, and formative for both of them. In September 2011, they married in Jamaica. The ceremony, by all reports, was warm, intimate, and joyful, a beach wedding surrounded by close friends and family. Meghan's best friend at the time, Monarchy Pretty, served as maid of honor. Trevor Engelson is not an obscure figure. His production credits include the critically acclaimed FX series Snowfall, a show about the crack cocaine epidemic in 1980s Los Angeles, which ran for 6 seasons and earned widespread praise. He also produced the 2010 film Remember Me, starring Robert Pattinson. He is, by any reasonable measure, a successful and respected figure in the entertainment industry. But the marriage did not last. By 2013, the couple had separated. In February 2014, a Los Angeles court granted them a divorce on the grounds of irreconcilable differences, a standard no-fault dissolution that, on paper, appeared entirely routine. What was not routine was how abruptly it ended. Royal biographer Andrew Morton, whose biography of Meghan was published in 2018 and drew on extensive research and interviews, reported a detail that became widely noted, that Meghan had returned her engagement ring to Engelson by registered mail. No conversation. No formal farewell. A ring in a package. Monarchy Pretty, who had been Meghan's closest friend since childhood and stood beside her at the Jamaica wedding, later gave interviews in which she expressed deep sympathy for Trevor. She described the dissolution as sudden and painful for him, saying he had not seen it coming with the force that it arrived. Their friendship, too, ended around this period, a loss Pretty has spoken about with evident sadness. Meghan's father, Thomas Markle Sr., has also commented publicly over the years that he believed Trevor never fully understood why the marriage ended. For several years, Engelson remained almost entirely silent publicly about his marriage to Meghan. He moved on with his life, continued his career, and eventually remarried. He is, by all observable accounts, someone who chose privacy over public grievance. So why, then, is his name suddenly appearing in discussions about royal succession? Why are his years with Meghan being connected to questions about Archie and Lilibet's legitimacy? The answer lies in a specific category of claims that began circulating years ago and have never fully gone away. Claims that, even as they are disputed and debunked by fact-checkers, continue to gain traction in certain corners of the media landscape. Let us address this directly, clearly, and without sensationalism. because the integrity of this discussion depends on it. There is a category of claims circulating online and, increasingly, in mainstream royal commentary that relates to Meghan Markle's medical history. Specifically, claims about her reproductive health during and after her marriage to Trevor Engelson. The most persistent of these claims involves an alleged statement attributed to Meghan's father, Thomas Markle Sr., in which he reportedly referenced a medical procedure undergone by Meghan in her late 20s. This claim has been amplified by commentators who use it as the foundation for questioning whether Meghan could have naturally conceived Archie and Lilibet. PolitiFact, one of the most established fact-checking organizations in the United States, has examined claims that Archie and Lilibet are not the biological children of Harry and Meghan and found them to be unsubstantiated. There is no verified medical documentation in the public record to support the reproductive health claims being made about Meghan. Furthermore, the births of both children are formally documented. Prince Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor was born on May 6, 2019, at the Portland Hospital in London. His birth was registered in the United Kingdom. Princess Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor was born on June 4, 2021, at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital in California. Her birth is registered in the United States. These are legal documents. They are not in dispute. So why are we discussing this at all? Because the legal and political impact of these claims does not depend on whether they are true. This is the part of the story that most coverage gets wrong, and it is the part that has genuine, serious implications for the Sussex children. In royal succession politics, perception is not merely influential. It is, in many historical instances, determinative. History is full of examples in which questions about the legitimacy of royal heirs, regardless of whether those questions had any factual basis, were weaponized to reshape succession. The alleged illegitimacy of various Tudor claimants. The debates around James II's son. The sustained campaigns against multiple European royal houses in the 19th century. In each of these cases, the question was not simply whether the heir was legitimate. The question was whether the narrative of illegitimacy could gain enough traction to become politically actionable. We are not suggesting that Archie and Lilibet face a Tudor-era challenge to their lives or their freedom. We are saying that the machinery being deployed against their succession is, at its structural core, familiar. Raise questions. Sustain uncertainty. Create pressure. Force a response, or, more powerfully, force a silence that reads like confirmation. The palace's traditional posture is to not respond to speculation. That posture, which served it well for centuries, is now being exploited. Every non-response is read by critics as an acknowledgement. Every refusal to engage becomes, in the social media ecosystem, evidence. This is the environment in which Archie and Lilibet's succession rights now exist. And it is genuinely, measurably more hostile than it was 5 years ago. To understand the legal dimension of this story, we need to understand how British royal succession actually works. Because there is a great deal of confusion in popular discussion, and that confusion is sometimes deliberate. The British line of succession is not governed by a single document or a simple rule. It is the product of centuries of accumulated statute, precedent, and constitutional convention. The foundational instruments are the Bill of Rights of 1689 and the Act of Settlement of 1701. These established that the British crown would pass through the Protestant legitimate descendants of Sophia, Electress of Hanover, a lineage designed to exclude Catholic claimants and stabilize the Protestant succession. The Succession to the Crown Act 2013, which received royal assent in April 2013 and came into force in March 2015, made several important modifications. Most famously, it ended the system of male preference primogeniture, meaning that the birth of a younger son no longer displaces an older daughter. It also removed the prohibition on the monarch or heir apparent marrying a Roman Catholic. Crucially for our discussion today, the 2013 Act retained and updated the requirement, originally dating to the Royal Marriages Act of 1772, that the first 6 people in the line of succession must seek the sovereign's permission before marrying. Failure to obtain that permission means the marriage is legally void for succession purposes, and any children of that marriage would not be eligible to inherit the crown. As of today, Prince Archie sits 6th in the line of succession. This means that when he eventually considers marriage, assuming current standings remain unchanged, he would be legally required to seek the reigning monarch's consent under the terms of the 2013 Act. That reigning monarch will almost certainly be King William V. The implications of that single fact are worth sitting with for a moment. Archie is growing up in Montecito, California. He attends an American school. His daily life bears no resemblance to the institutional preparation that royal heirs traditionally receive. Whether anyone in his household is actively preparing him to navigate the legal obligations of his position in the succession, including the requirement to seek royal consent for marriage, is, at this point, entirely unknown. If Archie reaches adulthood, falls in love, and marries without seeking the sovereign's consent, whether through ignorance of the requirement, deliberate choice, or estrangement from the institution, his children would have no right to succeed to the British throne. That is not speculation. That is the law as it currently stands. Princess Lilibet is currently 7th in line. The same framework applies to her, though given her position one step further from the throne, the dynamics are slightly different. Beyond the marriage consent issue, there is the broader question of what succession actually means for children who have never lived as working royals, have never undertaken public duties on behalf of the crown, and reside permanently in a foreign country. The title exists on paper. The practical substance of that title, the access to royal residences, the inclusion in state occasions, the institutional support network, has, for Archie and Lilibet, already effectively ceased to exist. No serious analysis of Archie and Lilibet's future can avoid the question of Prince William. William is currently the Prince of Wales and heir apparent. When King Charles III's reign ends, William will become king. And the powers available to a British sovereign with respect to royal titles, styles, and institutional recognition are considerable. Royal titles in the United Kingdom are not constitutional rights in the way that citizenship is. They are granted by letters patent, formal legal instruments issued by the sovereign, and they can, in principle, be revoked or modified by subsequent letters patent. The precedent most relevant here is the case of Prince Andrew. Following his settlement with Virginia Giuffre in February 2022, and amid the sustained reputational damage arising from his association with Jeffrey Epstein, King Charles III stripped Andrew of his military titles and royal patronages. Andrew retained his dukedom, the title of Duke of York, but his practical standing within the working royal family was effectively ended. Several credible royal commentators have noted that William, once king, would have the legal authority to issue letters patent that modify or revoke the titles currently held by Harry, Meghan, Archie, and Lilibet. Emily Andrews, a respected royal editor with years of experience covering the palace, has stated publicly that she believes William will, at minimum, address the question of Archie and Lilibet's titles when he becomes king. Her assessment is not based on personal animus toward the Sussex family. It is based on her reading of the institutional logic and the precedents that have been established. Royal biographer Tom Bower, whose book Revenge, Meghan, Harry and the War Between the Windsors drew extensively on palace sources, has written that William views Meghan's use of royal associations for commercial gain as a form of institutional exploitation. Bower describes William's posture toward his brother and sister-in-law in terms that suggest a king who will not be inclined toward generosity when it comes to their institutional standing. It is important to note that Harry and Meghan's representatives have consistently disputed characterizations of this kind, describing them as inaccurate and motivated by hostility. That is their right, and it is a perspective worth acknowledging. But the structural reality remains. When William becomes king, the decisions about royal titles, about institutional recognition, about the formal standing of the Sussex family within the monarchy, all of those decisions will rest with him. And the direction of travel, based on everything credible commentators have reported, does not suggest generosity. For Archie and Lilibet, this is not abstract. It means that the titles they currently hold, Prince and Princess, could, in their father's brother's reign, be formally removed. They would become, in the language of royal protocol, private individuals. Harry would likely retain his dukedom, as removing a peerage requires an act of parliament. But the prince and princess designations, conferred on Archie and Lilibet by letters patent in 2022, are far more vulnerable. There is a dimension of this story that receives less attention than it deserves, perhaps because it involves a legal ruling rather than a dramatic personal confrontation. In May 2025, the UK Court of Appeal issued a ruling that effectively ended Prince Harry's legal challenge to the security arrangements available to him and his family during visits to the United Kingdom. The background is this. When Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties in January 2020, Harry's entitlement to automatic Metropolitan Police protection, funded by the taxpayer and coordinated through the Royal and VIP Executive Committee, known as RAVEC, was reviewed and ultimately withdrawn for routine visits. Harry was told that protection would be available on a case-by-case basis, assessed according to the specific threat environment of each visit. Harry challenged this arrangement through the British courts, arguing that the case-by-case approach was inadequate and that it effectively made safe visits to the UK impossible for him and his family. He described receiving a lower level of protection than that afforded to junior members of the royal family who had far less public profile and, in his assessment, faced far less credible threat. The Court of Appeal's 2025 ruling found against him. The court determined that Ravec had acted within its authority and that the case-by-case framework was legally defensible. The consequences of this ruling, as Harry himself has articulated them, are profound. In a statement responding to the judgment, the Duke of Sussex did not say that bringing his family to the UK was difficult, or complicated, or something that required careful planning. He said it was impossible. That word, impossible, is significant. It is a legal and practical assessment, not an emotional one. Sources close to the Sussex family, speaking to outlets including the Daily Beast, have confirmed that Harry and Meghan do not believe they can safely bring Archie and Lilibet to the United Kingdom under the current security framework. The threat assessment that informs this view is not publicly disclosed, but it is taken seriously by those close to the family. Consider what this means for succession in practical terms. Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet are 6th and 7th in the British line of succession. They are heirs to the British throne, a throne that sits in London, in a country they cannot safely visit. Archie last set foot in the United Kingdom in June 2022, when he attended the late Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee celebrations. Lilibet was present at the same occasion. That was their last visit. As reported by ABC News, King Charles, their grandfather and the reigning monarch, has met Lilibet only once, when she was 6 months old. A royal heir who cannot visit the country they are heir to. A grandfather king who has met his granddaughter only once. A family that has been, whether by choice or circumstance or some combination of both, effectively detached from the institutional life they were born into. This is not a normal succession story. This is something that constitutional historians will be studying for decades. It would be naive to look at the various pressures bearing down on Archie and Lilibet's succession rights and see them as unconnected. The re-emergence of Trevor Engelson's name in succession discussions. The sustained circulation of medical claims that fact-checkers have disputed but that refuse to disappear. The legal ruling on security. The authoritative royal commentary about William's intentions. The absence of any official palace pushback against the narrative of Sussex diminishment. Each of these elements, taken alone, can be explained independently. Together, they form a pattern. That pattern is the gradual, methodical construction of a case, not necessarily a legal case, but a public and institutional case, that Archie and Lilibet are royal heirs in name only, that their connection to the institution is nominal, that their future within the monarchy is contingent rather than guaranteed, and that the claims of their birth and legitimacy, however baseless factually, cast a shadow that the palace need not formally acknowledge to exploit institutionally. This is how royal succession politics has always worked. Not through grand proclamations or dramatic confrontations, but through the quiet accumulation of doubt, the steady erosion of legitimacy, and the institutional indifference that follows. Archie and Lilibet did not choose any of this. They are children, a boy and a girl growing up in the California sunshine, going to school, attending their parents' charity events, living lives that are, from all outward appearances, normal and happy. They did not choose the family they were born into. They did not choose their father's decisions about royal service. They did not choose their mother's past. And yet the consequences of all of those choices are accumulating around them, quietly, persistently, and with increasing constitutional weight. Where does this story go from here? There are, broadly speaking, 3 plausible trajectories. The first is reconciliation and reintegration. In this scenario, Harry and William find a path, perhaps catalyzed by a significant family event, perhaps quietly brokered by palace advisors, toward some form of détente. Security arrangements for the Sussex family are revised. Harry and Meghan resume, in some limited form, engagement with the royal institution. Archie and Lilibet begin to spend time in the UK, develop relationships with their British family, and grow into their succession positions with at least nominal institutional support. This scenario is possible. Families have navigated greater ruptures. And there are those in the palace who understand that the spectacle of a permanently fractured royal family carries its own institutional cost. But it requires movement from both sides. And the publicly available evidence does not suggest that movement is imminent. The second scenario is gradual exclusion. William becomes king. Letters patent are issued. Archie and Lilibet's titles are modified or revoked. The Sussex family's connection to the British monarchy becomes entirely nominal, a matter of bloodline with no institutional expression. Archie and Lilibet grow up as private American citizens, the succession question becomes academic, and the story closes not with a confrontation but with a quiet administrative erasure. This scenario is, based on current trajectories, perhaps the most likely. The third scenario is escalation. The medical claims gain further mainstream traction. A formal legal challenge, however unlikely to succeed, is mounted against the legitimacy of the Sussex children's succession rights. Palace advisors are forced to respond. The resulting controversy draws the monarchy into precisely the kind of public legitimacy debate that the institution has spent centuries avoiding. This scenario is the least likely to result in any formal legal outcome. The birth certificates are real. The documentation is clear. But the political and reputational damage of the debate itself, the very act of the question being asked loudly enough to require a response, would be significant. There is something deeply uncomfortable about this story, and it is worth naming. At the center of it are two children who have done nothing wrong. Archie and Lilibet did not create the circumstances of their birth, their parents' decisions, their families' fractures, or the legal and institutional frameworks that now bear down on their futures. They are caught in a crossfire of adult choices, institutional politics, and a media ecosystem that has proven entirely willing to use their identities as ammunition. Trevor Engelson, for his part, has maintained a dignified silence throughout. Whatever the circumstances of his marriage to Meghan and its dissolution, he has not sought to weaponize his history. He has moved on. He has built a life. The use of his name in succession debates is, from everything observable, something he neither invited nor endorsed. The medical claims circulating about Meghan have been fact-checked and disputed. They do not reflect verified reality. But in the current information environment, disputed does not mean defeated. And the institutional machinery of royal succession is, in subtle ways, being shaped by narratives that do not require factual foundation to carry political weight. What is verifiable, credible, and genuinely serious is this: Archie and Lilibet are royal heirs who cannot safely visit their father's country. Their grandfather has met one of them only once. Their titles are subject to the discretion of a future king who, by all credible accounts, does not view their parents' choices favorably. And the legal framework governing their succession is, in multiple respects, more precarious than their parents have publicly acknowledged. The British monarchy has survived for 1,000 years through adaptation, sometimes graceful, sometimes brutal, almost always unsentimental. What it has never done well is stand still while the world changes around it. The world has changed. The Sussex story has changed it. And Archie and Lilibet, whether they know it yet or not, are living in the space between a birthright their father believes in absolutely and an institution that is, quietly and methodically, preparing to move on without them. The walls of the palace may not be closing in. But they are, without question, growing more distant. And distance, in the history of royal succession, has always been the first step toward absence.